fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
How to hear from God. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds. Welcome back to another Salt Strong Unchurched. This one is going to be fun. I am going to share with you a couple of stories that have happened to me and where I am 100% sure that I heard from God. And I'm going to give you kind of just looking back over these instances, the things that were in common in terms of where I was. I truly believe, not just on my experience, but other people's experience of hearing like direct message from God. There's clearly lots of examples and stories in the Bible that correlate with this and kind of back up my reasoning and really just what's happened to me. Also talk about, the right questions to ask, what to look for. There's actually things, at least in my experience, on what to look for and like actual physical things that have happened to me over and over and over again. I just had one happen this weekend, which is why I want to do it, because I've had this question come up quite a few times from, just from friends and people who listen to Unchurched, like, hey, you've talked about in your book, Fishing for Happiness, about, hearing from God. And you hear some people use this, I don't know, maybe just kind of like nonchalantly, oh yeah, I heard from God, or God told me to do this. And I think it's real easy to scratch your head, because I did for many years, saying, what the heck are you talking about? Like, you didn't hear from God. It's almost like unbelievable, because for most of us, we don't really have anything, like we want something physical to say, like science-based, I can prove that this was God speaking to me. And I know for years, I didn't believe it. So now looking back over really the past 12 years or so is when this has really impacted me, when I have now once again asked the right questions, which I'll share with you, and known kind of what to look for, and even some of the right places to be in. I am once again 100% certain this has been God speaking to me. And I want to go back to really the first time it hit me really, really hard. And I was dating my wife, or now my wife, Lauren. So we were not married. We were dating at the time. I was still living in Atlanta, working for a great company. I had a job that at the time I really did like, and it was paid real well. And she was in Augusta, and she was in medical school there in Augusta. And so we were doing the long distance thing, which was tough. But I still knew. I told my dad even the first time I met her, I was like, I believe this is the one. But still, we all get cold feet, right? I mean, not necessarily cold feet. We all have that little bit of seed of doubt. Maybe it's on your wedding day. Maybe it's right before. Maybe it's after talking to a friend, or maybe it's after seeing your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're like, oh, wait, maybe I'm making a mistake. And I didn't really think I was making a mistake, but just being candid, I think we all have that little seed of doubt of like, you know what? Is this the right person? Because if you're like me, I mean, marriage is a covenant. I mean, it's a covenant between you and that person and God. And you're basically saying throughout everything, good, bad, ugly, anything goes, you are going to stick with this person for as long as you both shall live. And that's a big step. I mean, that's an important step. You just got so much pressure and so much really just built in to that one day where you're saying, I do, is going to impact you for the rest of your life. And so I was visiting her in Augusta, and she was really into jogging when she had some time off from the kind of really rigorous medical school. And I remember we would go over, if you guys are familiar with Augusta, it's really close to the South Carolina border, and really you could just take a bike ride over, which we would do sometimes in the car, and we would go over the bridge to the South Carolina border, and we would jog along the river there. And so I remember this time, like I kind of knew she was the one. She was getting closer and closer to kind of being finished with, medical school. And I know like this was going to be the chance, or really the kind of the only time, because once she matched, which is another story I'm going to share with you in a second, and kind of, did her thing in terms of where she was going to be going to a residency, it was, I might have lost my chance. And so we're sitting there jogging, and she kind of gotten worn out. So I kept going, and I was going to come circle back. And this whole day, I had been just like really struggling. Like, all right, is she the one? Because once again, we're doing long distance, so the whole drive there, I'm thinking about it. I'm now spending the full day with her, and I'm just like, almost kind of looking for signs of like, all right, is she the right one? And so I remember being out there. And it was just on my mind. And it's like, you know what, God, if she's the one, like, show me some kind of sign. And that's literally what I said. And I didn't yell it out loud, but I said it to myself. I'm just kind of looking up in the sky. I'm all by myself now. She's quite a ways behind me. And I was like, God, just show me a sign. And I kid you not, within a couple of minutes after that, I remember exactly where I was. If you took me back to the spot, it gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. And I'm on the river, and there's like houses nearby. Like I'm not like in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere. I'm actually in the very beginning of this little stretch that's right on the river. There's not that many trees there. Like this is not like a really heavily wooded area. And all of a sudden, a deer, I kid you not, like a full-grown deer, comes out of these bushes, and it's just like two little small bushes. I don't even know how it possibly could have been in there. And then the water was right behind it. So it didn't come out of the forest. It didn't come out of the water. And this deer like jumps up at me, and I'm talking about like scares me. And so Lauren's way behind me. And it's like, she hears me, and I'm like freaking out. I was like, this deer just jumped out in front of me. And at this point, I still don't really get it. That, hey, maybe this was the sign I asked for just a couple of minutes ago. And like I like literally startled me. Like it really had me like going. This deer like came right at me and then just took off up the trail. Like it was so surreal. It was so crazy. And I was like, did you see that? I run back to get Lauren. And she's like, what was that all about? I was like, I don't know. The deer just came out of nowhere. She's like, that doesn't even make any sense. And so that was the first time it happened. And at this point, I still don't know that I put it all together, right? I mean, I kind of did, but I kind of didn't. So now let me fast forward not this much further after. So I do end up asking Lauren to marry me, and she did say yes. And I mentioned to you earlier the medical school part, and if you guys don't know how that works, once you finish medical school, you have a thing called the match. It's a big day. It's probably one of the most important nerve-wracking days out there, because you now have to match with a residency program to continue your medical journey. And not every doctor who wants to be a certain type of doctor, meaning a certain type of specialty, gets what they want. A lot of it is based on grades and you actually matching up with the right school and right residency program. And so there's a lot on the line. She wanted to stay local because of me, because we're now, had plans to get married. And I had a great job here. And so she was really hoping to stick in Atlanta. Maybe Chattanooga would have been like worst case. And then there was Texas. And lo and behold, the match did not work out the way we thought it would. And she got Austin, Texas. And now that's exciting because that's a cool place. It should be a place we're both excited. But now I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to like quit my job. And I've got like a dream job, at least in my eyes, of making, six figures and still being a young guy. It's really hard to go find a job like that and start over from scratch. So I'm like freaking out. And now I'm in a whole nother, like just different set of panic mode when I'm realizing, all right, I'm gonna have to make a really big decision here. And I remember where I was, exactly where I was in Kennesaw, Georgia. And I'm driving down the car, and this is all I've been thinking about is this the right move? Like, am I gonna have to tell my boss? What do I do? And I asked the question, God, show me a sign if this is what I'm supposed to do. Lord, just show me some type of sign. And I kid you not, a deer, again, jumps out in the middle of my car. I slam on my brakes on Bell's Fair, if you guys know where that is, in that Kennesaw, Woodstock area. And I slam on my brakes, almost hit this deer. It stares at me like 2 seconds and then takes off across the road. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I'm freaking out because now this has happened 2 times in a pretty short span. And I'm like, what in the world? And so now I'm like kind of like getting emotional. I'm like, what? Like, Lord, is you sending me a deer every time I ask for a sign on something specific? And, fast forward to the story, we ended up moving to Austin. I had to tell my job, and I just thought they were going to fire me on the spot. They made an exception for me the first time first time ever they had done that, to let someone work away from the office. And then just everything worked out like it couldn't have been any better. So I'm going to fast forward again. So we're now in Texas, and I'm realizing that, I can do a lot of this stuff on my own, meaning that, when you're in sometimes with a company and they're doing a lot of the support for you, and a lot of the stuff is critical and it's never easy to go on your own. But I always kind of had dreams of being an entrepreneur and doing it myself. And so like now this is on my mind. It's like, all right, maybe I should go out there and do this on my own. Like maybe this is my chance now that I'm in Texas and I'm proven that I can do this job without having to be in an office all day long. And I'm actually kind of enjoying doing my own thing. Maybe I should just do something on my own. And so I'm like praying on this all the time. And lo and behold, we're outdoors again. And this time we were looking at some Christmas lights with the kiddos. And this has been on my mind. Even my wife, I remember the time, she's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just got so much on my mind about potentially quitting." I mean, if any of you guys have been through that or even thinking about it now, changing jobs or quitting a job to start your own, it's a really, really big decision. It's not an easy one. And it's scary. And so like, this is the only thing I'm thinking about is potentially quitting. And I said it again, like in my head, I was like, Lord, if I'm supposed to quit this job and start on my own, it just show me a sign that you're going to protect me and that you're going to lead me. And lo and behold, like within a minute, my little daughter, Shauna, she's like, "Oh my gosh, look at all these deer." And there's 12 deer. Counting them. There's 12 deer. I still have a little video of it. There's 12 deer all right there. Kind of came out of nowhere once again. And like, I'm getting complete goosebumps at this point because now I'm putting all this stuff together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 12 deer. What does all this stuff mean? And some of you guys still might be thinking, oh, this is just goofy. But I'm telling you, this has happened so many times. It's not even funny. And almost 100% of the time, at least for me, there's been a deer involved. I don't know what that means. I don't know if other people have other stories about a woodpecker or anything. I have no idea. But I'm just telling you, every time I have asked a specific question, it has to be super specific is what I've learned. And then just trusted that God's going to answer it. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it might happen a day later, hours later. But almost every time I have had some deer come out of nowhere. And it just happened again this weekend in Georgia. So normally at the time that I would see deer at night or super early in the morning, the first couple hikes I did, I didn't see any. And I really hadn't been asking God for a specific question. And then finally, on the last day, I did. I'm not going to tell you what it was because it's personal. But I asked him for a very specific question. And lo and behold, I see a deer and then two more. So I see 3 deer all right there, came right out in front of me in the middle of nowhere. And this time I'm essentially out in the woods. So it's not like some crazy shock, but it was just so crazy. It was the time I did not expect to see them. And it was right after asking that really specific question. So let me just share with you kind of to sum up, at least in my experience, is one, ask a very specific question. And even ask for a sign if you feel so called to do. I've also had times where like just the wind picks up on my outside. I don't know, there's something happens. And 100% of the time, like it's a feeling as well where you kind of get that tingly, like goosebumps, like you almost feel like there's someone or some kind of presence around. And sometimes it's been an idea that's popped in my head as all that stuff is going on. But almost all the time, it's been a specific question I ask. And for me, there's been a deer involved. The other one is either being outside. The other time I mentioned I was in a car, which of course I was outside. I believe I had the windows down. It almost every scenario I've been outside. And if you read the Bible, obviously they didn't have Wi-Fi and all the cool luxuries that we had indoors. But almost all those examples were outside in nature. And I believe that's another thing that's always attracted me to fishing. And another reason that we started Salt Strong is just the magic that happens out in the water, the healing. We had a podcast on that about all the groups that take veterans out there and take people who have just been through tough times, and even some of the scientific proof about depression and how it can not necessarily go away completely, but how it could be subdued just from the fact of going outside, getting on a kayak and being out there on the water, getting out there in nature and just listening, doing a little talking and a whole lot more listening. But I'm just going to tell you, I would try it. I would go out in nature, go out to a quiet place, maybe take a hike in the woods and ask God a specific question. Something that maybe you've been struggling with or something that's a big decision coming up, and just see what happens. I'm not necessarily saying look for a deer because I don't think that's the end all be all. But for me, it's happened time and time again. I have at least a dozen stories like that have involved me asking a question outside and having a deer in some cases come completely out of nowhere. In a couple cases, almost even hit me. How crazy is that? And every time it was right after I asked a specific question, and almost like I was challenging God this first couple of times. All right, show me a sign, tough guy. And lo and behold, boom, it happened. So I don't know. That's my experience. I wanted to share that with you because it just happened to me here again in a recent trip to Georgia after I just asked a pretty big question, and it just was a great reminder, and just that feeling. It's tough to explain, but I mean, goosebumps is kind of the best way to explain it. There's just this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like there is a creator, there is someone up there who's listening to me, there is someone up there who cares for me and has my back and who's guiding me and is showing me the path if I'm willing to ask. And it doesn't always mean that you're going to get the answer you want either. Sometimes you might not get it and you might need to pivot and ask a different question, right? I haven't shared with you the many times where I've asked a question and did not see a sign and then have to kind of keep going back to the drawing board and thinking through, hey, what's this right question? Is this my way or is this his way? Is this something that only serves me, or is this serving the purpose that he made me for? And we've done a whole podcast on that with myself and Pastor Johnny. So that's the other question is don't get frustrated if you don't get your answer right away. Don't get angry with God if you don't see a deer or if you don't see any kind of sign. There might be a reason he's saying no or not answering your specific question, because he's got something bigger in store for you. And that, my friends, has happened to me many, many times. And those are usually some of the best learning experiences as well, in terms of pivoting and listening and keep asking questions until you get the sign. And you'll know when you hear from God, there will be a feeling, there will be some kind of weird presence, and you will know when it happens. So get outside more, ask very specific questions, and then just listen and look and see what happens. I'd love to hear your stories. Shoot me an email, joe@saltstrong.com. Even if you think I'm completely kooky, shoot me an email, let me know. But I really would love to hear any of your stories, especially if you've ever had the deer experience or any other type of crazy sign that kind of keeps happening when you're asking and speaking to God about certain things. So guys, love you. Thank you so much, and have an amazing week. Chat soon.
'Cause fishing, it's in